welcome to my podcast on real relationships. My name is Sophie Besson, and I am a relationship expert, international speaker, and best-selling author of the book Your Other Half. I decided to start this podcast because, in my opinion, relationships are currently not being portrayed as what they really are. Whether you're watching the news, TV, or on social media, the perception given to people is wrong. And my aim is to talk about what happens in the real world, talk about real stories, and listen to what real people think, do, or go through, as opposed to creating expectations of something that doesn't actually exist. I may not agree with everything that is said by my guests, but it is their chance to express their opinions and their stories. So here today we have Deanna Bryant, and we're going to talk about retirement and how it actually affects our relationships. Hi, Deanna. How are you?
Hi, Sophie. I'm just great. Thank you so much for asking.
No worries. So tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Okay. I'm a midlife woman, and I have my own coaching business for women in midlife who want to revive their marriages after the kids are grown. It's kind of what I decided to do in my second career in life because of my own experiences as a midlife woman in a midlife marriage that needed some serious work as the kids grew older. So I run Revive Your Midlife Marriage and also have my own podcast.
Oh, fair enough. So let's talk about that. Marriage and longevity.
Sure. Marriage and longevity. It takes a lot of work. You have two ways it can go. You can be in a mediocre marriage and just stay, or you can be in a mediocre marriage and choose to do something about it.
Yes.
Or just leave.
Yeah.
And of course that makes all the difference in the world. And, you know, we face a lot of challenges as we get older, and there's a lot of self-assessment. And all that self-assessment also translates into assessing our marriages. And some of those periods of time that we have that self-assessment, you know, our retirement, the empty nest syndrome. Those are key transitions in life that really affect the marriage and how couples relate to each other, how they relate to themselves and the world around them as they face the second half of life.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, I mean, one of the things I hear a lot, and that's let's say one person is retired and the other person now retires. The common theme is, oh my God, they're under my feet all the time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's funny you say that, because my husband, even though he will be at retirement age in just a few years, he won't retire for another 10 years. Mm-hmm. But he's 7 years older than I am. And because I understand the challenges of retirement and couples being at home with each other, I mean, I haven't decided, am I going to retire with him, or am I going to wait till I'm more at a retirement age? Because I have this fear about us both being home 24/7, because, you know, this idea of retirement is, you know, all this chance to do everything you've ever wanted to do, and it's going to be exciting and fun. But when couples come together 24/7, it's not all rainbows and unicorns.
Yeah.
You know? And so it's like, till death do us part, just not breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Okay.
Yeah.
So what happens is, you know, when they both retire, there is a lot of changes that are going on. First, you know, in retirement, people don't realize that a third of retirees post-retirement 2 years can suffer from depression. Mm-hmm. And it can be as high as 40% of retirees post-retirement can suffer depression. So that's one thing that's going to affect the marriage.
And I think the thing as well with that is, to go with what you were just saying about, do I retire at the same time as him or not, is that a lot of the time, you know, people still want to fulfill certain things, and they may feel that they are not forced, but it is expected of them to retire maybe at the same time, or to put aside some of their dreams and some of the things that they wanted to achieve so that we can enjoy things together. And I think that's where it becomes a bit difficult, because you really have to have some really strong conversations about your own needs as well as the needs of a couple going forward.
Yes, because you're right that some do anticipate spending all their time together when they retire. But that's neither realistic nor really healthy either, because the happiest couples enjoy some autonomy as well as time together. And you can't, suck each other dry expecting each other to fill every need you have once you come home. So this idea that we're going to spend all our time together, we're going to do all these things together here, I've got all these projects for us to do, this is where we're going to go, this is what we're going to do, can cause a conflict.
And especially as they haven't done that for the rest of their lives anyway.
Yeah. People they're going their different ways and they're used to some of that autonomy. Then you throw them back together. And for instance, my dad and my stepmom retired at different times. And so he stayed home and did his thing. She continued to work because she enjoyed it. But the expectation she had, and she shared with him as she continued to work, is, I need you to be responsible for these chores now.
Yeah.
If you're going to be home, this is what I need. And he was responsible for getting dinner done. And see, sometimes what happens is one couple will retire, or one will retire and the other won't. The one that doesn't retire doesn't realize, hey, you got to pick up the slack here.
Yeah.
You can't just sit at home doing your thing or golfing 24/7.
Exactly.
You've got to help me too, because let's face it, women who work still have the lion's share of the household chores to do.
And funny you should say that. One of my aunties actually said, we were having a conversation about aging actually, but we were more talking about skin and in our outlook and stuff like that. And she says, I've got a theory about this. And I was like, go on then. And she said, well, men on the whole, when they're not working anymore, they don't get up in the morning and go to work. They get up when they feel like it, they do their own thing, and then they read the paper, whilst you're still cleaning the house and still making dinner and still whatever. So it is keeping us young because we're more active. And I was just like, actually, you might have a point on that one.
Absolutely. Well, and that's how it was when my stepmother actually did retire with my dad. He was happy to putter around the garden, maybe go hunting and fishing every once in a while. When she retired, she was like, no way, I can't do that. I still have to get out and do things. And so she volunteered. And that's where the balance is. And that's why it's so important for couples. Everybody does this financial planning for retirement, right? What no one plans for are the psychological changes and the marital changes that are going to happen. There's going to be some grief and loss in either both partners as they retire together, or the one who retires first. There may be some depression, there may be some sadness and grief, but they have to have a conversation about what are our expectations as either one of us retire or both of us retire. What about the chores and how that's going to work? What are your plans for retirement? What do I see as retirement? And coming to some middle ground, because it can't be all your way. And this is what I call misaligned expectations. And that can happen. And so you've got to be clear and have these conversations, because everybody has their own idea of what retirement's going to look like for them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And for instance, we went out with a couple, they're getting close to retirement, and they were talking about it. And she says, well, I want to go and live in Europe half the year after we retire. Her husband looked over at her like he had never heard that. And he said, well, what about all of our families will be leaving here in the United States? And I thought, bingo. They have not had a conversation about what their expectations are.
And I think this is the thing, you might just look at life very differently. And we go back to one of the things that we talk about a lot is picking the right person to marry in the first place, because a lot of people don't have conversation about life vision, and actually that's really important.
It is, because we all have hopes and dreams, and most people are so excited to retire because they can set their own schedule, they can come and go as they please, they can do those things they really haven't had time to do, but those can be very different ideas and very different hopes and dreams.
And they need to be shared.
And they need to be shared. But also they don't only need to be shared, but there needs to be a mutual respect that your dream may not be my dream.
Mm-hmm.
My dream may not be your dream. So how can we work where you're getting what you want and I'm getting what I want? Which I would have said to that couple that she wants to live in Europe. What about spending less time in Europe so he feels like he can be connected to family? There's got to be that give and take instead of that gridlock. I'm retired and this is what I want to do,
One of the things I've also noticed is how sometimes in a couple there are problems all along, but because of work, because of various, life, shall we call it, routine and whatever, these problems are kind of there, but they're hidden. And then comes retirement and they reemerge tenfold.
Absolutely. Because, and the thing about it is, it's almost like they're these annoyances and problems they've had all along, but it's just so easy to forget them and go on. But then you come back home and you've got all these perpetual annoyances that are just magnified because I'm with you 24/7. And what happens, retirement is actually the most amount of time that couples will ever be together.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about it. And what happens is we all have our faults and foibles, and those little eccentricities get magnified when you're with somebody all the time. So what I tell couples is you've got to pick and choose. Is it a foible or is it something that really needs to be addressed? Okay. Because we'll have perpetual annoyances that aren't resolved no matter what. If you've got a slob for a husband and you're a real neat, or vice versa, that's going to be a perpetual problem you will always deal with. But then those things that come up that need to be addressed, maybe it's the communication. Maybe you really have not connected. Maybe you've not talked about what are your hopes and dreams and things you want to achieve from here on out. And because sometimes those have changed over the years. And if couples have not connected emotionally, then there's a total disconnect when they're back together. And so sometimes it's a great time to revamp the relationship, to revitalize, to take an inventory. Hey, let's look, how can we make our relationship better? What are some of the perpetual problems we're dealing with? And how can we address those? And I don't think that there's anything wrong. You don't think in retirement, oh, we're going to have to seek outside help. But this is the time that maybe it's really a good time to do so if you've got these insurmountable problems that have resurfaced.
And I think the other thing as well is to actually, in the same way as, you know how you've got a business, people do a business plan, but never plan their life. They plan the business, they plan whatever, but not the life. They plan the retirement financially, as you said, but they don't plan the rest. And if I just share an example, it was one of my cousins. She is roughly my age, so she's nowhere near retirement age. And she's got 3 kids, which vary between 16 and 10, shall we say. And she said that one day, it was years ago, but they went to a restaurant with her husband for the evening without the kids. They were, babysat somewhere. And she said, we actually really struggled to make conversation because all of a sudden we were not interrupted all the time. And I think that was so key when she said that, because, okay, I think you need to spend more time together in that case. And you need to spend more time getting to know what little things are changing in each of you. Because it's often the little details that we don't share because it's not important. It's not important at the beginning, but it becomes important. So I think that planning for retirement probably starts in your 30s in that way with your partner to discuss all of these things, so that when you end up just the two of you, well, you do have A, something to talk about, and B, you still know the person as opposed to just have it take their tea, for instance.
Exactly. And that's so true. But the most common thing that happens in relationship is what I call intimacy atrophy. We put career advancements, kids, chaotic schedules all before the relationship. And what happens is this intimacy, this closeness kind of atrophies over time. And then when you get to this place of retirement, it's like we have nothing. And you're so right. For couples, before they get to the empty nest, before they get to retirement, it's so essential to nurture that relationship throughout, or else your intimacy is going to be so atrophied that you're going to almost be starting over again.
And obviously, you know, there's always the possibility that you do end up on different paths because of various experiences, before of how in a couple you've reacted to these different experiences, and also because we do become more aware of our mortality. Let's be realistic. Retirement is the last kind of, you know, bit of road, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's that point of getting to that, here's what I have left. I want it to matter.
Yeah.
It's really important for me for it to matter. And so there's that reassessment. And sometimes it doesn't jive with the reassessment, especially if you're married to somebody who really just happy with the status quo.
Yeah.
They just want to be retired and kick back. That can be a problem. But what I would say to the person that finds themselves wanting to grow and become is grow and become. You know, you can't allow what a spouse is doing with their retirement to affect what your goals are in retirement. You can't put your happiness on them. No. You got to create your own. Now, some couples can do that. Some couples are like, no way. If that's what you want to do with retirement, I can't do it. And that's fine. But certainly I would always suggest couples seek help before they're just like, we're going in different directions. But sometimes that happens and it's okay.
There's been a thing ongoing in the last sort of, is it 10 years? I don't know if it's the same in the States, but certainly in the UK, more and more people get divorced in their 80s.
Yeah, and they're calling it gray divorce. And originally, gray divorce was coined when couples had been married 40 years or more. So the idea is they're older, they're grayer, hence the name. But in the last few years, what's happened is it's really applying to the boomers, the baby boomers that are divorcing, that have been married 20 to 30 years. And also those that have been second marriages, because second marriages don't have necessarily as great a success rate as first marriages. I hate to say that it happens a lot. But, you know, it's that range of people getting divorced at that age. And it's that reassessment. Is that looking at our marriage and deciding, you know, is this really what I want? And, you know, the days where you had to get married and stay married, no matter whether you were happy or not, are gone. You know, we've come to this point of self-actualization. And if I'm not happy, I don't have to stay here. So I think that has a lot to do with it. If you get to this point of retirement and you find out, you know, if this is what I got to live with for the rest of my life, I don't think I want to. And I think that's why that's happening. And I think it's also the result of what that intimacy atrophy I talked about. If you haven't nurtured the relationship throughout, when you get to the other side, it's going to be hard to get it together. Not impossible. That's what my business is. But it will be hard and it takes a lot of work.
And both people have got to want to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But, you know, I have seen spouses that want to bring in some change to the relationship, even though the other one was unaware. And you know who does it more? I'm gonna let you guess.
Women.
Yeah. Women are the first ones to notice something's wrong with the relationship, and they are far more likely to bring it up. So sometimes women can really be an impetus for change by setting boundaries, by requiring conversations, by not getting in to the perpetual fights that have gone nowhere, by taking care of themselves and really raising the bar. And it's possible for those changes to start. I know it takes two to tango, right? But it also takes one to invite to the dance. So there is that possibility that you can be an impetus for change in your relationship.
I've actually worked with women on their own, you know, that wanted to save a marriage and that have, because sometimes it's just about, the only issue is sometimes it's the ego saying, oh, but I want him to do the first move. It should be him. And I'm like, well, what should it be? Do you want to be happy? Do you want to be right? You know, because if both don't go together. So if you really value this marriage, you make the first step and you soon come back and you do the next bit. And if he doesn't, then you've got your answer.
Right, exactly. But you can't, whatever their response can't determine your happiness and satisfaction. You work on you. And that does change the dynamic, because you think in other relationships in your life, you know, we have to shift how we relate to make the relationship work sometimes. And when you stop reacting to the BS, you're going to be happier, you know. But also when you set the boundaries, you're going to raise the bar. This is what needs to happen in our relationship. Are you on board with me? You know, women have a great influence.
And then it's creating the new normal. You've got to define what that looks like.
Exactly. You have to define what that looks like, because if you don't, you're just throwing up these ideas, and you have to do that together, because no two people in a marriage see things the same way. It'd be great if they did. We would all get along great. But you have to be open to your spouse's point of view too, and they have to be open to yours. But until you can communicate it, you don't know if you're on the same page or not. There's just this disconnect.
And interestingly enough, what you just said reminds me of something, is sometimes people know that what they've got, that's not what they want. They know that, all right, but they actually don't know what it is they want. If you ask them to define what that looks like, sounds like, whatever, they haven't got a clue. It's just always just not that.
Exactly.
How can you get what you want if you don't know what that is?
Absolutely. And, you know, that gets to, you know, when my husband and I went through our marital challenges, we were given this exercise, and I use it with my clients, where each couple makes a needs list. What do you need in this relationship? And for me, it took me a while. I didn't know what I need, because some of us are needless and wantless people. You know, I hate to say that, but it's true. We don't even know what we want, but you're right. I know what I don't want.
Yeah.
And so it takes some really thinking about, what do you need in the relationship? And so I have couples do that needs list, share it, and then ask each other questions about it, being curious, and then decide, is this a need we can meet, or do we need to tweak it? You know, I can do this much in this need you have, but I'm not sure I can do this one very well. You know, not all your needs are going to be met in your marriage, and accepting that is so important.
I was just about to say that it's, you know, there's certain things that we can't provide to somebody. For instance, I'm really not into extreme sports or whatever. I'm not the right person for someone like that. But that's not to say that we can't be together. What that is to say is find a mate or a group that can accommodate that.
That's it. That's it. And that's the other thing in retirement. Find your groups, find your tribes, go with that, because those may fill the needs that you have. And then when you come back together, you've got those needs met. And you're not expecting your spouse to supply all the emptiness you feel in retirement, you know?
And I think it's also, you know, I was going to say, assessing the companionship, but we sometimes forget, and especially in COVID times, how important it is to have, a companion by your side. And yeah, they may not meet everything that you want, but how difficult is it to, first of all, meet someone that you like the look of? 2, that you've got something in common. 3, that you can actually live with, that you've got feelings for, and sometimes we overlook all of these things, and we're not grateful for the fact that actually this human being, we get on. And how rare is that? Because we are difficult creatures to accommodate and live with. It's not easy to live with somebody. We've all got quirks. So why just throw away without at least trying?
Well, and I think what couples, don't value as much as they should is that friendship. Yeah, we get together because we like the way they look. We have the same interests, we have feelings for them. So what happens in the meantime, and I think sometimes we forget all the good things about our spouses. And, another thing I have women do is, what are the things you can appreciate about your spouse? And I also have the men do it too. What can you appreciate your spouse? Where you begin to write down everything you appreciate, everything you can think about. He's got a good work ethic. He's a good father. He smells good. I still like the way he looks. I like the way he laughs. And what happens is you start remembering these are all the positive things about him, because we can get focused on what's wrong. In a culture that values passion and romance and all these grandiose things, sometimes it's about being good friends. In fact, good friends have the best relationships.
Definitely. Well, Deanna, we're getting towards the end of our time together already. So what would be your one pearl of wisdom you would want to share with someone?
I would say the big thing is to start, if you've not retired, and even if you have retired and you're facing some of these difficulties, to begin to have that conversation. What does it look like? And be accepting and respectful of whatever your spouse says, and begin to make a plan for some of those things, and be able to address some of those psychological challenges that happen, to be supportive of some of the grief and fear people can have as they retire. But it's all about looking back at each other, facing each other again, and not being afraid to really meet those challenges and look at ways to make that retirement all you want it to be.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Deanna. It was so lovely talking to you. And for everybody else, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, then please subscribe, leave us a review, but more importantly, come back for the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie.